Appreciate y'all's patience this morning, and we won't deduct 15 minutes from your time, Dr. Thomas. So, I promise you.
We'll only need 5. All you gotta do is say yes.
So anyway, welcome everyone. It's our special budget work session. And are we live now, Heather? I keep forgetting to ask that. But Tom Stribling, Commissioner Stribling is participating today via Zoom. So he's on the screen, but we'll go ahead and get started. And Mr. Adams, I'll recognize you to offer any opening comments about the budget process.
Yes, sir. Just as everybody's aware, the recommended budget was presented to the board last Tuesday. The budget is now in the hands of the county commissioners, and normal process is we have some of our larger institutions come and present and discuss with the board. So as you can see the agenda today, we do have 4 entities come discuss with the board, and if you're pleased with the board, we'll go ahead and start and recognize Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Members of the board, good morning. Want to take a quick moment to thank you for all of your support and give you a real quick update before we get into the budget. And this will take my extra 15 minutes now. On the Health Science Center building, we're probably about 98% complete. 3rd floor is working on a punch list. 2nd floor is working on a punch list in probably about a week and a half or a week to follow. And then 1st floor will follow up, and we're still finishing around June 18th, somewhere in that nature. So we'll be able to hopefully utilize it and move into it over the summer and start classes this fall in that building. So, and then we'll also do a ribbon cutting open house. I'm looking at a couple dates to share with our board of trustees tomorrow evening, and then extend those invitations out to everyone. So anyway, I want to thank you for the opportunity just to visit with you real briefly today. Our slides are very limited. I think we only brought in about 5 or 6 slides. We try to be exact and to the point. And for that, I'm going to let William Brothers, our CFO, kind of go through that, because he and I have run the numbers on several different things and timing. So we're going to let William go ahead and present that request to you.
I got you.
Maybe if you don't get this.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah.
Love the hat.
Yeah. He's giving away where he is.
I always drop it in the middle. If you'll minimize everything.
Beach.
Beach.
It's sharing.
Oh, good for him.
No,
I like the beach. Let's get some burn. Top feet.
oh gosh. I didn't have.
I always forget to put on the sunscreen.
Well, I hate the most of that when you get home, you get about Slough Mountain District, see the mountain district doing that. I hate that.
I can forward it to you real quick if
Talked about getting sunburned. I was sunburned, just finished eating. I went to travel.
I got it, yeah.
Saturday, 4 hours.
Yeah.
To see the granddaughter. I came at 10 o'clock, but she didn't, she wasn't on the 10 o'clock game. So we had to wait till 3 o'clock.
I can forward it right now. Who do I need to forward it
It
to?
only went, Will and I went over there.
We're not gonna do this today.
It's not attached to her
Daughter looked at me.
Let's see, I forwarded it to Darlene.
Good.
I haven't had.
Oh.
Yeah.
Forward it to me.
Okay.
I'll just, so you said it's this morning? Okay.
I'm sending it right now. Here you go. I just sent it to Mr. Adams, so I just send it to anyone else. Heather.
Send it to me, I'm gonna forward it on to.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good thing to remember when you
They send it to me, too.
Don't send it to voice. We're having to rely on you to put it on the screen. No offense, but that's getting desperate.
Brian, you didn't have to say it in front, please.
Now they got
You
this.
get to say instead of. Are you trying to say?
I don't have any input.
I haven't had a dog
Wow,
in
shucks.
2 years.
Ours are doing amazing.
And I had it going a month ago. And this little had come up this far and it's never come.
Dried up.
No rain. I mean,
No.
it's just,
Yeah,
it can't.
no.
Might as well land that on that
Oh,
ice fall.
get that arrow back right there. There you go.
Ms. Superintendent, it's like this every time.
It's all right, we're flexible.
You're out today.
Okay,
We good?
We're
Okay,
good?
Good, all righty. Well, sorry about that. Hope
That's
everybody's
all
doing well. It's really a pleasure to get to see everybody in person. I think the last time we met, it was all kind of virtual, so, you know, things have gotten much better this time than they were this time last year, so we're all thankful for that. And great to see everybody happy and healthy and whole. So I want to get into the next slide, where we get into some of our basic assumptions function for the budget this coming year. Just a couple of things we looked at, as is true for most institutions. COVID had a pretty significant impact on operations. You know, certainly it changed things. Very pleased with how our institution responded. We really went from, you know, seat-based to virtual in like 2 weeks. I think we had a lot of things converted, and very pleased to report that, you know, we, I think, managed COVID very well. We have a COVID team that meets every week, even still. We don't, to my knowledge, I don't think we had an instance of, you know, widespread spread as a result of anything on campus. It was really, you know, handled well, and we were able to, I won't say operate seamlessly, but I think operate well in a very challenging environment. So kudos to a lot of people for that. So as normal, we're ever mindful of funds, and this year we've got the lowest capital number that we're requesting really since I've been in this position. So I'm glad to see that. A couple other assumptions that we're looking at: both the House and the Senate have submitted bills that have, you know, called for a 7% salary increase, which is consistent with what the governor has mentioned. And so I've given some numbers here, really more for information than anything else. Typically, we submit about a 2% operations growth expense request, and we have a number of reasons for that, but you know, we kind of factor that in. So if you got to an additional 7%, in addition to taking the 2% out, you'd be looking at an additional 38,129.62. We aren't requesting that at this time, and we don't have that in the budget for operations. That's for your information. If that request does get approved, or if the governor does, you know, bring that forward, what that would look like. Mention operations. You know, one of the things that we're looking at now, we're asked to assume that employer contribution for teacher and state employee retirement is going to increase from 19.7% to 21.68%. So that's one of those escalation pieces that we just kind of anticipate as normal business and normal growth. So just to kind of put you aware of that. Flipping over to the next page, looking at operating expenses, you see a slight increase in the 21 to 22 charts as far as that goes. And really what's happening there, we've got our 2% built in, which I just mentioned a while ago, but the biggest cause for the bump, as Dr. Thomas mentioned, we are bringing on the health science building. And so with that, we have some additional operating costs to include additional personnel for housekeeping and for those types of services. So the biggest causing that jump is that $267,000 that was presented on our 3-1 that submitted in our previous work session. So that's really what, you know, necessitates the majority of that increase there. Any questions on that?
I have one question.
Ma'am.
The statewide, I know the enrollment in community colleges has decreased during COVID, which is expected. Did that happen at SCC as well?
Yes, ma'am. We did have a decrease both in headcount and FTE. You know, fortunately, we're keeping track of that on a weekly basis too. And I feel optimistic. I mean, looking at the numbers now compared to where they were, I mean, it seems like we're trending in the right direction. And
Right.
you know, certainly when the health science building comes on, that's
Yes.
a significant opportunity for growth as well. So I see blue skies. I don't see the sky falling.
Good.
So I'm
That's
optimistic with that.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
What about occupancy? Did you see a decline in students or did it stay the same?
We saw a decline, and some of that we somewhat anticipated. I mean, if you went, you know, if you look at, for example, the summer that COVID hit, we had some continuation of classes that was extending into the summer, which cuts into your summer availability as far as that goes. You see a little bit of a contraction there. In terms of overall enrollment, I think, you know, one of the things that you kind of anticipate is there's a group of students, or there's always a handful of people that really want that face-to-face experience, and we've done, you know, a number of things to try to give them that. You know, hybrid courses. We made everything as high flex as we can, and we're looking at new technology, high flex, which will allow for kind of that that distance, kind of face-to-face feel, but will also allow for people to go back and look at recordings and things like that, because some people don't. Some people really need that face-to-face instruction, and it's not enough for them to be able to look at projects and PowerPoints and things like that online. They need the lectures. And so the high flex helps to allow us to do that. So we're trying to create that kind of interactive environment in a virtual environment where that's still needed as far as that goes. So I think from that standpoint, you know, again, we did see a contraction. We don't anticipate that that's going to be something that's ongoing though.
Commissioner Woody.
Thank you.
More to your point, and Commissioner Strickland, we received from the state probably about a 6.5% is approximately what we lost in those numbers.
Okay.
Many of our sister colleges were in the double digits.
Oh, I
right
know.
up to 10,
Yeah.
12, and 14. One of the colleges last week reported 18% loss. So we felt real comfortable where we were at and what we were able to do, but that's approximately what you'd be looking at.
Sure. Thank you so much.
I'd be remiss, and I mentioned it once, but I'd be remiss if I didn't give a significant shout out to academics altogether. I mean, just their quick transition from literally having face-to-face classes to being online in about a 2-week period. I mean, they transitioned those classes when COVID really when it really started hitting, and we had to shut down something or, you know, change operations. So they really did a yeoman's effort in making that happen. So any other questions on this part? The next chart is kind of a breakout, and again, these are forecasted areas, but areas of operating expense detail. And as you see, that ties back to what our operating costs are. So operations, salary, and benefits, that includes our operating expenses, not to just have salary and benefits. So we're looking at general maintenance and that type of thing. Do anticipate a bump in utilities and supplies because, of course, we're bringing on a large building. And that building, in terms of square footage, to put it in perspective, is about a 19% increase in our total Jackson campus footprint. And so when you see some of those numbers go up, it's the second largest building we have on campus, so we would, you know, kind of anticipate that. Insurance costs, again, same deal. We anticipate some increases there. And then software maintenance and general expenses is just a straight line item as well. Any questions on that? Okay. Next chart is a 6-year comparison of capital budget requests, and as you see, we're at our lowest point as far as that goes, and that really kind of speaks to our budget philosophy. As far as that goes, we really look at where the needs are. We do a lot of things in-house and internally, and it always makes me feel good. You know, we have an annual insurance renewal with the state, and they always look at our buildings and give an assessment. And we really only had escalations, which typically they'll do a 3% escalation across the board. We only had escalations in a couple of buildings, you know, they're looking at that. But we have some 50-year-old buildings as far as that goes. You anticipate some of that, but they always speak to how well things are maintained and how well things are taken care of. You know, big kudos to our maintenance staff, you know, and everybody else for being able to do that and consistently doing that over decades. So that's why we're able to come in and look at where our real needs are and really address things with a scalpel as opposed to, you know, something much larger. So as you see, we're just under 300,000 this year for capital requests. And this next slide is kind of a breakout of what those capital requests are. You know, for the most part, just to kind of look at some of these, the carpet squares we had in Balsam, we've got you know, a couple of areas where we've been kind of bringing on different phases of that building every year. It allows us to kind of, again, address where the specific needs have been as opposed to coming in with a $40,000 request one year to get it all done. So that's been helpful. We've got some commercial pressure washing. And what that is, we've got a couple of areas where we're trying to, when the building comes on, we've got several areas where it's just not feasible for us to do pressure washing in-house. We don't have scaffolding and some of those kinds of things where you can get some of those tall areas. So again, we're bringing on this building. We don't want to have everything else look comparatively bad, you know, that kind of thing. It's time, in other words. So that's where we're at there. In terms of updating the exhaust for the exhaust system for the welding booth, again, that's just for ventilation. So we've got, you know, we don't want to have a situation where there's too much smoke or anything like that that's kind of in there, and that's, you know, for the most part been kind of controlled, but we're trying to get a good system in there. So our welding instructors kind of provided and is working with the company to help bring that in and make that a little more palatable for students and for themselves. Fleet vehicles, and we had a couple of vehicles, one of them being a truck that I think had about 230,000 miles on it by this point in time, so it's fully depreciated. A couple of those kinds of things that we've just been trying to do on an annual request, and as you know, I've been bringing some of those aged vehicles along as much as we can. I'd be remiss if I didn't speak to the fact that we do have an automotive department, so we have people doing a lot of these repairs on hand. That saves us thousands, if not tens of thousands, every year by having that done. So they really try to, again, talk about doing it with a scalpel. They try to move, you know, make things as functional for as long as they possibly can be, and they do a really good job with it. And then outside of that, just a couple of other items. We've got a tractor that we need to bring on. I think that one's been around for a long time. I believe that was 1992. So we've got some stainless steel tiles behind the culinary kitchen that we were asking for, and then fluorescent light fixtures in the automotive lab. So specific needs and individual needs that we're kind of looking at there. And then finally, in our total requests, again, if you look at where we're at overall, you do see us up a little bit from last year, but again, that is due to the recurring costs associated with the health science building. If you factor that out, then you're right on par with where you were last year. So I think it's pretty vanilla for the most part, but if there's any questions I can answer, I'll be glad to.
Okay. Any additional questions?
All right, you know where to find me, you do.
Absolutely. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you all so much. Have a great morning.
You too.
See ya.
Jackson Library. I don't know why it's, oh, that's a good question.
I should ask them, but
Go ahead.
under community college expenses, down there at fifth item down on their proposed budget,
Page 115.
You go grab them. I mean, that's, I don't know, yeah.
It does have $1 million.
it's got $1,500,000, $1 million,
I didn't
1,100,
notice that.
yeah, over $1 million for Fontana Regional Library.
And then under there's Jackson Library is a whole different category. So this is under, this page 115 in our budget here. The bottom. Yeah, that seems odd.
On 115, under community college expenses. And the
You
fifth
know what,
item,
darling?
Community colleges, the request to 401, 296, and 3,782. The library's underneath that.
I know, but this, it says under community college, the last
it's
thing.
got our community college, Fontana Regional Library for over $1 million, and it's under Southwest Community College.
It says community college expenses.
The heading is underneath it.
What?
The heading's underneath the
So,
department.
Oh,
so see the total, the heading is where the totals are.
okay. I see the heading. This is the heading for this section, like this. Goes like this, and this one goes like this. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay, all this is Jackson Library, right here. So the total is 1 million. All this is community college.
Good.
So these utilities are for the Jackson Library repair. That wasn't clear to me either.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
So you see the expenses before you even know what it's for?
exactly.
Well,
Yeah, the title is where is on the same line as the totals.
thank y'all. It's just a million.
Sorry, yeah.
Hey, it's just $1 million question, y'all.
Yeah, just a million, but he's being careful that. I
Was
do
it to
have
our
one-
benefit? No.
I do have one question that popped in my mind when you walked back in. As far as the automotive, I've talked to several dealer automotive repair places, and they said they are having such a hard time finding trained workers. Does that program have much enrollment now? Or I know you can't control that, but I'm just curious.
We can't control it, you're right, but it does have the enrollment numbers there.
Oh, good.
As a matter of fact, part of the new gear program that we have at the state pays for students to go into those types of programs.
Okay.
And so I think that last week, I heard that there was like 3 or 4 more students that were going to jump into it. And then we were limited also because of the 6-foot social
Yes,
distancing.
I'm sure.
Higher ed was still kept at 6 foot, but in public schools, I think we're able to go down to 3.
Yes.
So we
I
were
heard that.
still, and so now it's gonna open things back up a
Good.
little bit for the enrollment for us
Okay.
at this point.
Yeah.
So we should get in
Thank
good
you.
shape.
Well, and I know you're always responsive to our workforce
Yeah,
concerns,
yeah,
but I've heard that from 2 providers. And
right. And we do, and we're gonna continue to hear that across the industry
Yeah.
right now. It's gonna be a little bit tight.
Okay.
Yeah. They get the ASI or ASC certification, which is their licensure, so
Sure.
that's good for them.
It is great. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
No, it ain't not, that's crazy.
I'll change that report format in the final copy.
You turned it upside down like this would work. If that on hit read.
And you probably done it this way for years and it's been fine, but,
She did.
No,
No,
it's,
this is different.
Oh,
This
okay.
presentation's different.
it's kind of funny. I was talking to her. She has
Okay.
downloaded an Excel, and that's where you get the clear lines. And we were talking about that, and we said, okay, we'll just, because it's a much easier thing to just print this out on a draft like this.
oh, sure.
But then, in order to get the clear lines around it, you basically have to do it in Excel. So it's just funny. She and I was having this conversation,
Oh,
and it popped up. So there'll be clear lines around it in the final
At least you're looking at
I know. that's-
Absolutely.
That's,
That's good.
I
I'll tell
told
you
her this,
what.
this format reminds me that, I don't know if you've been around the old dot matrix
Yeah,
system without the colored paper. Because the old dot matrix system would have green, white lines so that you could see the columns or see the rows.
Yeah.
So anyway, it'll look more like Excel spreadsheet.
I guess we're ready to move on to the next one.
Yes, sir.
All right, and we welcome our partners from the public school system. Mr. Buchanan, I'll let you introduce.
Yeah, thank y'all very much. I'd like to start by introducing our new superintendent, Dr. Dana Ayers. So Dana is originally from Lincolnton, grew up in Lincolnton, and came to school, Western Carolina, so she is well familiar with the area. Dana was a school teacher, was an assistant principal, was a middle school principal, which is as hard as it comes. And has quite a bit of central office experience, and moved to Jackson County about 3 years ago. And her son's been attending our school. So Dana's not a stranger to us or to Jackson County, but we're super excited to have her in this new role as our superintendent moving forward. So just want to make sure you guys get to know Dana. I do want to start off by just thanking a lot of people. Our budget request is really simple, it'll be really short. So as my Papa CJ would say, I'm going to politic just a little bit. So I have, many of you've heard me say over and over again over the years that whatever role I've had in Jackson County Schools as a school teacher to deputy superintendent, it's the greatest job in the world because of 3 reasons. One, we have the most amazing children in Jackson County. We are so blessed to have the children that we have. 2, we're blessed with a tremendous staff. We have teachers and custodians and bus drivers, child nutrition principals, board members that all love children dearly and have dedicated their lives to making a better life for the children. And then the 3rd is that Jackson County loves its public school system. We are so well supported. We are so well loved by our community and by the commissioners. I was telling Dana as she comes in, that's one of those things that new superintendents always want to know about the relationship between the Board of Education and the county commissioners. And ours has been tremendous. It's been tremendous, not because of any people in this room. It's a part of the culture in Jackson County that we work together, and we're all stewards to continue that moving forward. And we're super proud of that. But you put all those things together, and this has been the most challenging year to be in education that could be possible to be imagined. And I told our principals at our last principals meeting last week, I will never be as proud to be a part of anything as I've been to be a part of Jackson County Public Schools and to be a resident of Jackson County for the last year. The way we have come together as a community, as a school system, to support our kids has been second to none. I think we've led the state. I think a lot of places, I know a lot of places have called us along the way and said, what are y'all going to do? What are y'all going to do? And I think we've been recognized for doing it right. We were cautious, but we value having our kids in school. And so we worked very, very hard to keep our kids in school, keep them safe, keep our staff safe. And I just cannot say enough about the hard work of the teachers, the principals, our local health department. Was on a call twice a week for the majority of the year with our health director, with folks from Western Carolina and SCC, all working together to make sure our kids and our community are safe. And I feel like so many good things came from that. So just unbelievably thankful for that. I also have to brag on the commissioners and the school board on the forethought and foresight that y'all had over the years to make us a 1-to-1 district. Right off the bat, when we had to go to remote learning, our kids had computers, our kids had devices, and that's because of the foresight of this board and the Board of Education to be able to do that. Also, many years ago when we came together and wanted to figure out how we could make our schools safer, not just physically safer, but emotionally safer for our kids. Those additional school counselors that our schools have, those have been needed now more than ever before and will need it moving into the future. And it's just sign after sign of the people of Jackson County doing right by their public school system and most importantly, doing right by their children. So I just want to thank everybody for all that to get us to the point where we're at. For those that are curious, our plan moving forward, so our expectation is that we will be 5 days a week, 7 hours a day, full face-to-face instruction. We will have things in place to allow a child who has a medical condition that they cannot safely attend school. And so we will support those children like we always have with any kid with a medical condition, with homebound services and all the things that go with that. But we will not be a virtual public school next year. Our expectation is, and we've learned very well, very clearly, that we can do a good job with virtual education, but we do a much better job when our children in our classrooms and those teachers are able to love on those kids the way we know that they need to be. So that's our plan moving forward. Barring anything from the legislator or the governor, we've got no indication of anything different. That is what our plan is. And so we are unbelievably excited about having some normalcy. I'm ready. I know Coach Dietz is. I'm ready for some fall football like it's supposed to be. Ready to fill that gym at Smoky Mountain High School with, as you've heard, Jimmy Cleveland's coming back. So we're ready to fill that gym back up at Smoky Mountain High School and all those things that makes our school system a wonderful place to be. Field trips and all the fun things that make school. So that's where we're at. As far as budget requests go, on the second slide there, yeah, our request this year is pretty straightforward. We're asking for our annual 2% increase to the departments to keep up with the increases of healthcare costs, retirement rate, and all of that. And then in addition to that, we've had many conversations about teacher supplement in Jackson County Public Schools over the years. That's something that we've always wanted to do together with the Board of Education and the county commissioners to be able to supply a competitive teacher supplement that's used as both as a recruiting tool and also as a retention tool. I will say that we, again, with that forethought from the commissioners and the board, we are basically the only school district west of Haywood County that has had a supplement. But of course, those supplements just east to us have been quite a bit larger than what we've had traditionally. But with the support that we got from the commissioners last year during COVID and moving forward, if we were to get an additional $23,000 coupled with the money that you guys have pledged to support every year leading up to this point, we would be able to have a $1,700 teacher supplement for certified staff. That includes media specialists, that includes counselors, that includes all of our certified staff. The way we would like to structure that is that it would be paid out in 2 lumps. We're going to do that before Christmas, probably in November payroll. So our teachers will have a nice little pre-Christmas supplement to help get through the holidays. And then late in the spring, prior to spring break, so that our teachers have that leading into spring break or leading into the summer. We feel that will be a tremendous tool in recruitment and retention. And again, I've shared this with Mr. Adams. We feel like that this will put us in a really good place when you compare us to all the other counties in the state of North Carolina. Something to really be proud of and bragged on, and something that will be sufficient for a period of time to come. I don't think this is going to be something that we'll need to revisit for a few years down the road. This will be a competitive supplement, and we can move on, talk about some other things, get this done, and say, hey, we're right where we need to be in supporting our teachers and keeping them here and recruiting them here and be able to move forward. And that's all that I've got for you guys, other than just to say thank you so much. Would be happy to entertain any questions you guys have about this ask or our budget overall or anything else you might have for us.
Any questions from the board members?
No, but being a school person, I can't even hardly imagine the job y'all had to do. How you handle that and how well you handle it, and how professionally you handle it. And, it seemed like to me it'd be an absolute nightmare. On nightmare I had when the kids were still at the house, wasn't it? School. Wednesdays wasn't a good day around the house. And,
You're gonna get your Wednesdays back, coach, come on.
but, I think that Dr. Dana Ayers, I think you're lucky to have the help that you have. And, Mr. Buchanan's done an awesome job at a tough
Yes.
time.
Very good.
And to have someone like that standing not behind you, but beside you, I think you're very fortunate, very lucky. And, we're looking for good things. We want our football team to be as good as East Lincoln.
So Dr. Ayers is a graduate of East Lincoln High School, which I complimented her on. Now, the good thing about it is, so East Lincoln is the Mustangs, so she's got no problem
I
cheering for
know,
the
because we
Mustangs.
played them.
Yeah, and their school
Playoffs.
colors are the same as
Yeah.
Blue Ridge, so she's got all the colors and the mascots down. So
And
we're,
my husband is a graduate of West Lincoln,
Oh, my.
and we all taught at Lincoln, my husband and I. So
Really?
We've covered the entire district.
Yeah.
But happy to be in Jackson now.
We're happy you're here.
Well, and I would like to make a comment. I did not realize that until I got involved in the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. And I'd like to, do you mind, Mr. Buchanan? Thank you.
yes, sorry.
I did not realize that there was adversarial roles between school boards and boards of county commission in a lot of areas of our state. Till I went to these meetings and people were expressing their concerns and mismanagement of funds and lawsuits. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I've never experienced that. And then as I learned my role here on the commission, I realized just how fortunate we are to have that supportive role with our school system. And I have grandchildren in Maryland who saw their teachers for the first time the week after spring break. Had been virtual all year, and it has been very difficult. So I want to commend you, and I know Mr. Buchanan, you took the lead in that here in Jackson County. Thank you so much for making that extra effort for our students to be live, at least whenever they could.
Well, I really do appreciate those kind words. Didn't do it by myself.
Well, I know that.
Yeah, we have amazing principals. Our
Yes,
principals
we
did an
do.
outstanding job, and our teachers are just, we used to call them rock stars, now we refer to them as superheroes. They really did go way above and beyond.
And if I could, Commissioner Woody,
Yes.
thank you for that comment, because I don't mean to disparage anybody, but I've already commented to Jake often about the good collaborative relationship that I already see. It's very apparent between the commissioners and the community and the school system. So I'm grateful too that we've been in school as well. As a mama of a kid at Fairview, I'm very grateful to have had school all year long. So it is a testimony to what this community and what the school system with Jake and Dr. Tipton leading that this year through the pandemic. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board member? Mr. Adams, you have?
Yeah, I don't want to jump in front of the board, but I just, I do want to, Jake, if you would, Mr. Buchanan, we got two issues that, or at least one issue that's going to be coming back before this board relatively soon. So I'd like to take the opportunity for Mr. Buchanan to update the board, but I don't want to jump in front of the board's question, but it's really about capital.
Okay. Any questions about the budget request so far? Mr. Striblin, did you have any? I can't see you because of the screen, but.
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure. All right, then we'll segue into additional conversation then.
Mr. Buchanan, if you would just give a real quick update on the Blue Ridge School, but then really I'm wanting to concentrate more on the safety project and just update the board because hopefully we'll get multiple bids and this issue will come back before the board to put the money in place to proceed forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So our project at Blue Ridge to update the water and sewer system is coming along nicely and will finish on time. I do have to thank Mr. Adams for all the hard work that he and the planning department, that everybody did to secure that grant for us, because that's a $1 million plus project that we would have had to figure out how to fit into the capital long-term plans anyway. And so that's such a critical infrastructure need. And so thankful for that. But it is Stillwell Enterprises has done the work. They've done an outstanding job. You know, we're always thankful when a local business picks up one of these contracts, come in as a low bidder. But Jason Stillwell and his group, they've done an outstanding job. The quality of it, we're very, very pleased with. And so that'll be wrapping up. So that's a good thing. With our egress courtyards, our safety updates on the 4 campuses of Blue Ridge, Smoky Mountain High School, Fairview, and Smoky Mountain Elementary. So as you guys are aware, this is not necessarily the best time to be going out for bids that you want to come in under budget or that you want people to put in bids for. So Mr. Adams was there when we opened up. We bid out the project, the 4 schools as individual projects, hoping that we would entice more bids and more interest from smaller companies. We only had 1 bid for each one of the projects. We did not open those bids. We re-advertised, but we have since, listening to people in the profession, in the trades, specifically in that kind of work, we feel that it'll be, we'll solicit more bids if we go this summer. There's also some talk that we've kind of come over the hump of the hysteria of construction. And so some of the inflated costs just from I might not be able to get materials, so I'm going to bid this project a whole lot more than I think it's going to be, because I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get the steel, the concrete, the materials needed. So we feel like that if we go out, we'll probably advertise in late June for opening up bids in July to be able to solicit better bids and more bids. And again, so we've got a budget for this project. We've had the estimates come in to feel like that it should come in where we need to be to pay for it. So we just don't want to allow the timing of the fact. I mean, we've been working on this project for years. I mean, many years ago, we all gathered together at the Golden Age Center and talked about this project. And so we don't want to rush into it and pay an inflated price and get an inferior product and not be good stewards. Bless you. And not be good stewards of our local dollars doing that. So the project is still, we're still fully supportive of it. The school board still wants this to be their top priority right now. We just need to let a little bit of this hysteria die down so we can get some good bids and some good contractors putting in. Again, hopefully some local ones, but at this point, we'll take what we can get. Anything else, Mr. Adams, you want me to address?
Mr. Buchanan, I know that in our work session meeting we had at SCC, the project went from around 2.5 to somewhere projected around 4 million. Are those numbers still there with this hysteria?
That's what we feel like that it's going to come in at. That's what we feel like it can. Some of those informal conversations with folks from the industry and from the trades, we still feel optimistic that that's doable, but just not necessarily right this minute. A lot of folks just aren't putting in bids right now because there's so much pent up demand for getting work done that now that things have kind of opened up, everybody's going out for bid. I don't know if you noticed, but in the Asheville Citizen last week, Western Carolina took out a half-page ad to solicit bids for a parking lot. So, that's a pretty expensive ad, pretty big, trying to get attention. Everybody's in the same place. There's a lot of work out there. And so if we continue to be patient, I think we'll be able to get what we want at a price that we can reasonably afford. Yes, sir.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, we will hear from our public library system, and our librarian, Ms. Tracy Mars, is here. Welcome, as always.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Hello.
always so smiley.
Oh,
Oh, I thought you were holding that up to tell me to wear a mask.
no.
I was gonna say, okay, okay.
No.
I thought this was. I really did.
He was like showing you.
I was confused.
You get that mask.
No. You are absolutely fine.
Okay. Okay. He's telling me something. Good morning, Chairman McMahon and Commissioners and Commissioner Stribling. I don't know where to look to say hi to him.
He's got that hat on in this picture.
I see that. He must be on vacation.
I wish we all had a hat, Tom.
Good morning.
So thank you for inviting me here today to tell you about the library and what we've been up to and what we have planned for the coming year. First of all, I'd like to thank the commissioners and the county manager for approving the 2% increase we received in January. That was very well received. It did go to bonuses for our staff, which was much appreciated. And we also felt so supported by the commission and that they, we got the message that what we were doing was good and we were keeping on our service. And it sort of added that boost, when everyone's just feeling worn out and dealing with different things. So our original request for this year was about a 2.7 increase over last fiscal year. But I amended that when we finally got our updated figures from Blue Cross Blue Shield, because they always estimate pretty high and then come back. I think they did that the last couple of years. So our current request is just a little bit over 2%. I did see the proposed budget on Friday that came in at 2%, and I really appreciate that. And staff will be receiving a 1.3% cost of living adjustment this year. So just run over a few things in my report. Obviously, we had an interesting year like everybody else. It was not boring. We luckily we all stayed safe and well and managed to keep services going. We were closed from, I think, the 17th of March till about the middle of May, and then we started opening up curbside and then started opening up by appointment. During the time we were closed, I did have my phone number on the answering machine at the libraries and managed to help people with issues while we weren't open. So we did continue that. Had some really interesting phone calls. So we did change the way people could get library cards. I did work with Western Carolina. When they were not in class, they do not have a collection of children's books, and a lot of their, that electronic children's books. So I worked with them to get their students cards for the elementary school kid classes, things like that. We also continued working with SEC, NC Works to keep people looking for jobs. We work closely with the Department on Aging to work with seniors to get them part of our make and take program, so we could have the drive-through and they could pick up things to do. People love curbside service. They're going to scream when we take it away. We are going to maintain curbside service for people that are vulnerable or elderly people that just find it much easier to do that. We also continued our Red Cross blood drives, and the Boys and Girls Club of the Plateau and Cashers were able to work out programming with the Cashers Library. We saw hundreds of kids through that program. So just a little bit, obviously our statistics were skewed. We did still circulate over 73,000 physical items. Ebooks pretty much doubled. Ebooks, e-audiobooks, people were checking out a lot of those online. Also with the audiobooks. Our NC Kidsy resources, which is for pre-K through 4th grade, had almost 14,000 checkouts. And that is partly due to the the partnership which we have with the Jackson County Schools so that all the children get library cards when they start school through the Student Access Project. We had almost 41 separate Wi-Fi usages. You know how Wi-Fi was necessary. So that was, we were hopping in that. We have extended further into our parking lot to increase that usage. Study rooms were used like crazy. We answered over 25,000 reference questions. Yes, we do have to count those for the state library. And we had 6,999 technology one-on-one appointments. Basically, that means a one-on-one assistance for someone who is having trouble or needs to write a resume or has a new phone they don't know how to use. I'm sure some of you have used that. We do a lot of that. I'm not looking at you, Gail.
I know, but I
Throughout my report, I do have a couple of quotes. You know, we had people who said that their work would not have been possible without the building being open because of Wi-Fi. A lot of people were working from home and many of us don't have internet at home. So the library did receive over the last year $387,500 in grants, which was pretty huge this year. We are lucky enough to, my assistant county librarian, Jessica Fillior, is a really wonderful grant writer. And we received some significant work done because of those grants. We did expand Wi-Fi through further into the parking lots for people to use when we're not open. We did supply hotspots for school-age children. When we started this grant, we were going to work more with Jackson County schools, but I think they received their own hotspots through another grant. But we did give a lot of hotspots to the Catamount School and ended up using a lot for SEC and the public. Hotspot it's about the size, it's a little bit smaller than this, and if you can get cell service, it will give you internet service from your laptop. You hook up to it like you would a Wi-Fi box. And it's enough so that kids could take it home if they didn't have access to the internet. It was free of charge. And we had some teachers take them home if they didn't have internet at home. So really useful for that. You can also, if you don't have any cell service at home, which some of us also have, you know, if you're working at your grandparents' or a friend's house, you can carry it with you anywhere and use it as the internet. Some people call them jetpacks. We also got a mobile print access grant so that people, if you're at home and your computer, your printer breaks down, you can send the print job through our website and then stop by the library and pick it up. So that was really handy. A lot of people coming in with their equipment, they can now print by mobile print access at the library. We also got technical infrastructure support grant for new servers because we were doing so much more electronic stuff. And also we got a really good grant from the North Carolina Department of Commerce, which is replacing a lot of the aging staff computers. We're 10 years old this year, as you know, so a lot of the computers are 10 years old. So one of the great things about these grants is it reduced the money I had to come to you guys to try and support some of our stuff. The other thing it allowed is we could replace all of our security cameras outside the building, as I know they're very useful for a lot of the police use them for different things. We now have a new HD system of cameras and we could do that because of these grants. So that was very useful. We also received a grant from Jackson County Community Foundation so we could provide a collection of 18 books, classroom sets for each of Jackson County Daycare's classrooms, full of age-appropriate materials dealing with health, hygiene, mental health, feelings, and emotions during the pandemic. So we were able to get those to all of our daycares. And they are theirs to keep. Those are not a lending situation. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm rambling. The Friends of the Library are amazing. I don't know what else to say. You know, they're all volunteers. They could have just put their feet up and relaxed at home during the pandemic, but they were able to receive, the Cashier's Friends were able to receive $17,500 in grant money to support their library. And our friends also donated $10,000 extra to the library. They totally transformed what they were doing in both places because the bookstores were closed, and did a lot of selling online, and just never stopped. They worked really hard. So luckily our funding from them will continue, so we could still offer programming and things for children. We are 10 years old next month. As you know, it was quite Commissioner Jones was integral in getting us up on that hill and in the library. So we didn't plan a lot of celebrations simply because we didn't know where we would be this June, and suddenly everything's changed. So we are still working on some nice things to do as far as celebration. The Albert Carlton Cashier's Library librarian Serenity Riches just celebrated her 10 years working at the library. And last month I celebrated 29 years with the Fontana Regional Library. So apparently I'm ancient, and many of my employees were not born when I started working there. They're just babies. So looking ahead, 2 or 3 main projects. Libraries nationwide, many of them, especially in the bigger cities, are moving to a fine-free model of service to try and remove barriers for those that cannot afford. You know, they may have fines not because they couldn't get their books back, but they didn't have transport or things like that. Or they're working and they, you know, couldn't get in. So we're looking at that model. We did hold amnesty during quarantine, so we did not have any fines or fees because we felt like people had enough to worry about without worrying about that. So the first step towards that will be removing fees for DVD checkout. We're one of the only libraries in North Carolina, the Fontana Regional Library System, that charges for DVD rental, and we hope to get rid of that. Outreach, you may have noticed in the budget that the Rover budget line has gone. The Reading Rover is retiring at the end of June. I know.
I got those books when I was little. It wasn't called the Reading Rover.
No.
But it was the bookmobile.
Yeah.
And they would come out to Piney Mountain Road and I would get books.
We had the older bookmobile, then we had the big blue bread truck.
Yeah.
The Reading Rover, it was just not fiscally responsible to keep repairing it. Yeah. And it also isn't really the best type of vehicle for where we live.
Okay.
It has a hard time getting up the mountain to different places. The preschool directors are all really anxious about that ending. So we are, that money that would normally go to the Rover is being funded back into outreach for the Jackson County libraries in Caches and Silva. And there are 11 childcare centers in Jackson County that we have been visiting once a month for the past 20 some years, reaching 225 children in 27 separate classrooms. We think with, we have a vehicle, we think we can redo that model and continue that. It won't look the same, but that is our goal. Working with youth services, we may look at a part-time person to help with that and make sure that those children are still receiving what they need in those daycares, because I think that really sets them up well for pre-K or kindergarten. So it's something we're looking at. We're also talking to DOA, the Department on Aging, about some sort of outreach for the older population. We haven't had that in 20 years, outreach, and that's, I think, pretty important. We're looking at a grant to, which allows you to actually hire someone, which many grants do not do, and have them doing one-on-ones for technology for the elderly, supplying them with a hotspot so they have internet and some sort of technology, and going one-on-one into their homes and doing that. So that's sort of pie in the sky right now, but it's what we're looking at doing. So that's on outreach. We're also applied for a new grant. We'll know in a couple of weeks if we received it or not, for planning for sustainability. As you know, libraries are always changing to keep up with the times and make sure that we are doing what we need to be doing and that we don't lose our importance in the community. I've talked to Mr. Adams about that quite a bit. And so this planning for sustainability would specifically look at developing the 5-year long-range plan for the Fontana Regional Library System, making sure we're addressing things like outreach or outreach to Hispanic populations, keeping up with technology, just being that community hub in both Cashers and in Silva. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, or if there's anything specific you would like me to take back and start working on.
Any questions for Tracy?
I didn't see, Mr. Adams, that the $125,000 that we discussed in the budget for capital for the HVAC for the library, is that in on this page?
No, it's
In capital
under
outlay.
Public Works.
Okay.
It's not.
So, we discussed that.
So we still will have
So-
that.
So we do have in the recommended
Okay.
budget repairs for your HVAC system.
Yeah, or replacement probably.
Replacement.
Yeah. It's been,
That's funny, you jumped on repair, we've been repairing it too long, yes.
yes, you've been preparing that for, let's see, 10 years.
10 years.
I think from what I've heard, it's probably going to be a 3-year plan because it's a huge building and they're cannibalizing one thing to work on another. People are getting grouchy. Patrons don't want to be warm.
Well, and I know that a lot of times people that, some of the elderly people come to the library to be cool in the summer on
They
those
do.
very hot days because it's a refuge for them. When they
Yeah.
don't have.
We have definitely over the pandemic seen an uptick in homeless people using the library as a space to feel safe and relax. And we have cold spots. We can move them. But yeah, there are some units that are just not fixable. But the people are there. I know Bubba's there every day working away, so we appreciate it.
Just one other idea. When you reach out to our senior population
Yes.
with Mr. Wells with the Department of
Yes.
Aging, maybe the Meals on Wheels could be
We've talked about that. Laura Chapman is our representative on the Senior Services Board now, and that is one thing we think that would work brilliantly. It's already going there. You just pop a bag of whatever they need on there, and we think that would work really well hand in hand. Yeah, we are also doing lunches for children 5 days a week this summer, instead of just 1 day a week. So we will be working with the Jackson County Schools again. I need to meet you and say hi. And so we will be doing 5 days a week lunches and breakfast in the next day for children this summer.
Well, I want to say that I know personally because of having family that works at the library, that you all have really tried hard to meet the needs of our community and have done so in many wonderful ways. We really appreciate
We
that.
actually have had a lot of fun. We are running as normal now.
Yes.
No more appointments, no more, minimum numbers of people. Pretty good to go. We're really happy about that. There's no other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Mr.
much.
Adam.
Let's take a 10-minute recess. Boss, do you want to move over here?
So
Yeah,
Can
is
you get
that
outside?
some bothering you?
I'm already burned up now.
No.
Good. Okay, we'll go ahead and come back to order. This time, we're going to hear from the sheriff and his office concerning their budget requests. Sheriff?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hope everybody's doing well. Hope you had a good weekend. Beautiful weather. Coach said he had to put up pace. He's had to get it all weekend. It's that time of the year. So, yeah. Hey, first of all, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about our budget coming up for the 2021-2022 year. And I think I've had an opportunity to speak with each one of you. And our primary focus is our salaries. And being competitive with the surrounding agencies, it's something that we're getting to a critical point. We're going to have to do something. So I've got a Chief Deputy White here. He's going to be discussing some on the salaries today. All of you are familiar with our Axon project we've discussed previously. Major Queen's here to discuss any questions you might have about the Axon project. Captain McCoy, for any issues or anything that need to be addressed in the jail, he can answer them. Shane Phillips, our executive assistant, she's going to be here to just make sure we stay on the right page and keep up with everything going on at the office like she normally does. So, no, I just want to tell you, like I said in the beginning, our priority this year is being competitive. We've discussed this already with each of you, just know the needs, and it's our understanding that we did do a presentation in our presentation on the increase for the deputies. Since that time, we've had the opportunity to work with Mr. Adams and Miss Fox and come up with an alternative to just completely abandon the pay scale that we're on. The sheriff's office is set out separate from all other county employees, and what we're looking at with working with the county manager and the county finance director is just putting all the sheriff's office personnel back in with all the remaining county employees. And they present us a good project, and I know with nothing in the draft budget, so kind of concern for me, but I did see where there's $1 million set aside in the draft budget. So I'm really hoping we can make a move now to do something for the near future. So I'm just gonna, since we're starting off staff, I'm gonna ask Chief Deputy White to come up and go over what we've come up with here recently.
Thank you, Sheriff. As the Sheriff said, when we met with each of y'all individually, we shared with you our proposed budget. And of course, that grew into the county manager's draft budget. And we're here today to talk about another option. We met last week with Mr. Adams, and he shared with us some information from, sorry, that's my hand on this. He shared with us some information that I wanted to get to in your hands today. Talk about. Everybody have
I'll give it, I've got it.
You've got a copy already. So if you'll recall in our, before I begin any further, the sheriff's already acknowledged, but we need to, it's been a lengthy process for us getting to this point. And we've had a lot of conversations internally as a committee. And I want to thank Ms. Fox for your time, because what these numbers and this plan that we presented today, that we present to you today, is due to a lot of her efforts in putting all this together. So thank you for supporting us on that. And Mr. Adams, thank you for taking your time last week to meet with us again after you presented your proposed budget to the commissioners. But if you recall, when we met with each of you individually and shared with you our proposed budget, we had thrown in there what we believe is a simplified approach to boosting our pay and addressing our pay scale problems that are causing us issues with retention and hiring. And we had thrown in there a 10% across the board pay scale adjustment or market adjustment to the sheriff's SH pay scale, which I will refer to as the SH pay scale because that's how the grades are identified. And that proposal was estimated to cost in the $400,000 range recurring. We kind of came back to the board or came back to together as a group and got this suggestion from Ms. Fox to look at transitioning away from the SH pay scale that had been created and bringing all the sheriff's office employees that are currently not in the county pay plan over with the entire group of county employees. And that would address what we're trying to target rather than an across-the-board pay raise. It would target our deputies, our detention officers, and our sergeants and detectives, because that's the group of employees in the sheriff's office that are in most need of having a pay scale adjustment. And it would fix the problem that we feel like is causing our major turnover issues and our major hiring issues. That we've lost 25 employees in the sheriff's office in a 2-year span. Since we talked in May, we've lost 2 more detention officers and 2 more deputies. They're all leaving for higher paying opportunities. And we're not replacing those people. For every 2 we lose, we're able to get maybe 1 back, a new hire. So it's about a 50% return rate on what we're getting back into our staffing. And we've got to fix that, or we're going to get to a situation where it's critical and we're going to have to start reducing salaries. And we can't afford to continue to kick that down the road. And so we were alarmed and concerned, and that's what brought us back to talking to Mr. Adams after we saw his draft budget. And we wanted to get this plan in front of you because it's more cost effective. As you see the difference in the two on the first handout that I gave you, $425,000 to implement the 10% that we proposed or talked about in our draft budget. This plan would be a $344,000 cost. Like I said previously, it will address the issues that we've got with our detention officers, our deputies, our sergeants, our detectives, which is our largest group of employees. The second handout that I gave you is the pay classification. And it shows you where these deputies' positions would fall in the new pay plan and how the salaries would change. You can see the percent changes out there. It would, the deputies and detectives and sergeants, or deputies and the detectives would see up to upwards of a 12% change in their pay. And that's drastic changes, but it gets our hiring rate up where we're trying to get it more competitive with our surrounding counties and our partner agencies within the county, putting that starting pay up around $36,369 was a significant change from where we're at right now. And it also rewards our detention officers. You see upwards of 6% change in their pay there. And it really is what we feel is the most viable option to getting that done. And so what we've got to do as a group, the county manager and the board and the sheriff's office, we got to find a way to get that into the final budget. And in our conversations with Mr. Adams, I know he's already told you, we've talked about the salary study plan for the whole county, and you've seen that in the draft budget. This would be that stop the bleed proposal that we talked about when we had those personal conversations prior to the draft budget coming out. It's not going to fix it, and I really expect that when y'all, if you do choose to go in the final budget with a countywide salary study, you may see even that there is still a gap, even after if we were to do this plan. But I think it will address the immediate needs that we have to implement in the sheriff's office to start turn the tide on our salaries. And of course, funding is outside of our area, and Mr. Adams and we've talked about, and he gave me permission to use his words, but there's capacity there to do that with the money that he's proposing to set aside to address the critical needs in the county. And we're not the only agency that's facing critical needs. I'm sure there's some others, and that's the challenge for the board and for Mr. Adams and Ms. Fox, is being sure that all the county employees are compensated the way they need to be compensated. And we recognize that. But we do have a large swath of county employees under our supervision at the sheriff's office. Maybe close towards 20% of them lie within the sheriff's office. And we do feel that we provide a service to the county that is critical and needs to be supported. And we don't want to get to the point where we're having to reduce services and start doing things differently that impact the way we provide for the county. So I'd like to answer any questions you got about it. I'd like to invite Mr. Adams into the conversation and share any thoughts that he's got about how we might get this implemented. But it's an important endeavor for us at the sheriff's office, and it's something that I don't think we can continue to push down the road beyond July 1.
So if I may, I just follow up on the information. Did everybody bring their books from the sheriff's office? If you did, if not, it's shared. If you would, please go to page 5 and 6 of the budget of the sheriff's. Matt, do you have that?
I do.
Will you, Horace, do you have?
Nope, I don't have it.
Matt can share it.
Okay.
All right, so I just want to point something out before I take you to the information that's put together by Ms. Fox and myself when we were going through this. I just want to point out on page 5, you can see that's the law enforcement entry salary. If you go down to the middle, you can see the mean is $36,858. This is the data that was provided by the sheriff's office. And if you flip to page 6, you can see that's the detention entry salary. The mean is $33,643. Now, obviously, when we look at mean, you know, that's not the maximum and that's not the lowest amount either. I just wanted to point that out before I go into explaining the alternate proposal instead of doing a 10% across the board, because this is something that if we went forward with some type of adjustment to the sheriff's office, this would be the recommendation from county manager and the finance officer, because we believe it meets what is being requested from the sheriff's office in regards to the salaries. So if you'll go to the information that was handed out, but it was really the piece of paper that the chief handed out talking about the proposed grade changes. I just want to make sure we all understand what we're looking at here. And so everybody can see the first column, it just says department, and then the second column, it says position description, and then the next column is number. Just so you know, that's the number of employees in each of those positions for the sheriff's office. If you go to the next column that says grade, where it says the detention officer is SH 46, well, that's their current grade schedule. You remember the chief said that currently the sheriff's office grade plan is separate from the county's plan. And so ultimately, if you go and look at the minimum, mid, and max, that is their current plan. And then if you look to the next column where it says grade and right below it, you see 20. That is shifting that over to the county's grade plan. And you can see what the new minimum of that detention officer would be, which is $32,988.08. Now that gives a 6.81% increase to that position. Now existing employees would also get the 2% that's proposed, step adjustment that's proposed in the budget. So for existing employees, for detention officers, that would be 8.81%. Is the 6.81 is for minimum. Now the distinction is that's given the existing employees their one step that they deserve. They get an 8%, almost 9%. then it also increases the starting salary by the 6.81%, which helps in the recruitment side. Now, going back to the 32,988, the reason I referred you to page 6 of the sheriff's office budget presentation is you can see the mean is around 33,643. So it gets you right pretty close to the mean. And I just wanted to show you why we feel like this plan basically meets the needs or the request of the sheriff and also matches up with the data presented to you. So if you go on down to the next grade, which is the grade 22, former grade SH 47, you can see the starting salary of 36,369. And if you go to page 5, you can see the mean for LEO entry salaries is 36,858. So it really is matching up, getting up to, actually the 10% request really wasn't quite getting to the meaning of the information that's being presented to you. And so just a reminder that 12.16%, that's for the starting salary. Existing employees would get the 2% on top of that, so they would get the 14%. And then you can see as you go down, you can see that also gives the shift 12.16% for the detectives. And see, one thing to note before I go line by line, to shift it over to the county grade plan, let's look at the county grades. You see grade 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 27, 28, 29, 34. You see that column going down there? Well, to shift over all the employees over to the county plan, we have to make sure we keep separation of those employees. And meaning, obviously, you can't pay a detective the same as you pay a deputy. And so a lieutenant shouldn't make the same as a detective and things. And so that's where we feel like we do have enough room to keep the separations if you shift it over to the county plan. And so I don't necessarily have to go all the way down, but I do want to mention that ultimately you jump down to the civil processing sergeants and some of the lieutenants. You can see at that point, there is a small separation between them and the detective. And you can see that percentage drops down from 12.16% to 6.81%. And as you go on down the line and you see the lieutenants, grade 25, you can see that the increase basically reduces to 1.73. So what this plan does do is still allows for separation, but it actually puts the majority of the salaries within the areas in which the sheriff is saying he has recruitment problems. And that's ultimately pretty much putting it into the detention level, the deputy level, and basically right around the sergeant level. And then as you start getting up to the and the detective level, once you start getting to the lieutenant and higher, they do get a little bump, but it's not as much as the middle employees. I just want to see if there's any questions. I want to make sure everybody just understands how to read this and see how you're shifting from one grade to another grade and where the minimum salary shifts from one to another. Is there any questions about? I just want to make sure we understand what we're looking at. And then finally going back to where Chief said, welcome to use my words. Basically in my manager's summary, in the budget summary, I did mention a couple things, and I'm actually going to read it verbatim. Okay. I do state in my budget summary to the board, we had multiple requests for salary reclassifications and salary adjustments. Currently, we're having hardships in employee hiring and retention, especially in public safety and healthcare professionals. I'm recommending a salary study be conducted and have set aside $1 million in this proposal for phase implementation. Several of our neighboring counties are currently conducting salary surveys. Failure to reserve budgetary capacity for these needs will result in our inability to competitively recruit and retain essential personnel. So I guess the point is I am recommending to the board that you reserve, you've heard me use this term multiple times with you, reserve $1 million for salary adjustments going into next year. That $1 million is above the above the 2%, by the way. So technically we're putting aside $1.4 million because the 2%, one step increase is over $400,000. But ultimately, my conversation with the sheriff and the chief last week is whether or not a portion of that $1 million should be released early or not before the results of the salary study. That really is what it backs up. Really, the board's got to decide whether or not you're going to go with the recommendation of putting aside an extra $1 million for salaries. That's really the first thing that you got to decide on. And the second thing is, if you did that, are you willing to set aside $344,000 of that immediately for the sheriff's needs? And that's what it really comes down to. I hope I've framed it up and set it up.
So that clarifies.
And I'll just say that I personally, this is just me, I don't think this is an option. I don't think we have the option to decide whether we want to do it or not want to do it. I think we have to do it. We see the problem. How many vacancies do y'all have now?
June 1st, we'll have 10.
That's 10 employees that are out here doing what we need for them to be able to do. And the other worry I have is if we do take the $1 million set aside and pull from that, the thing that I'm worried about is we know Haywood's doing a study. Does this average change next year? I mean, do we fall behind again? So is there anybody else in these other areas doing studies? How much change is going to come about? Because it could mean that we adjust the numbers this year to next year, we'd be behind again potentially.
So I do believe it all depends on whether or not the two other, we know Macon and we know Haywood's going through this stuff. It all depends upon whether or not they budget the money to implement. And if they implement it, then they are implementing salary increases based upon this very same data that we're looking at. And so if they implement the results of their salary study, then I do believe we will be dealing with this issue potentially in the future again. But we don't know that until they actually implement the results of their salary study.
Those 10 positions that are available right now, is that about 10% of the sheriff's department?
It would be a little less than 10%. It's, let's see, 82, so we're right, it's right in the 10% range. My math's not good off the top of my head. Ms. Fox is giving me a wink up there.
I always defer to her as well.
Yeah, I don't have the exact number out of the top of my head.
If I could say something, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I agree with you, Brian. You know, it's not something that we want to do. It's something that we have to do.
Exactly.
I agree with you 100%.
Commissioner Jones?
When you look at that, I like to do percentage and numbers. And when we're looking at our county's safety is 10% less than it needs to be, that's significant.
Yes.
That's true. And as I mentioned in our meeting that we had privately when Commissioner Woody was there, you know, in the southern end of the county, 70% of the homes are vacant in the wintertime. And that's the time that the break-ins are the most. And that should be the time that we ought to have more of a presence throughout the county, particularly where there's a lot of high percentage vacation homes. So besides getting just up to par, I'd like to see us work on their budget and Ms. Fox on trying to get you a few more officers just for that component.
I appreciate that. And reducing services is not something you can do in the sheriff's office setting. There are some law enforcement agencies out here, and there's some other departments out here where you can take some things away and still be successful. But there's not a task that falls under the office of the sheriff that's not important. We can't afford to turn our back on our schools. We can't afford to turn our back on the jail. We can't afford to turn our back on our court security. We certainly can't afford to turn our back on our investigations and our patrol division. They all, I mean, you can't assign one's more important than the other. They're all critical. And so that's when we start having those numbers of vacancies, that's when we start worrying that we're not going to be able to provide services the way it needs to be provided for this county. And we just can't afford to continue to kick it down the road. It's something that's got to happen. And I appreciate all y'all's support. Mr. Triplett, thanks for speaking up. And Brian, I appreciate that. I know we have your support. We've never questioned whether we had your support. And we didn't ever think we were not going to get there. And as I said at the start, it's so important to us, and we're so grateful for having Mr. Fox and Miss Fox and Mr. Adams, and y'all partner with us on trying to find a solution. We threw something out there to start with, and we said we've got to find a solution, and that's what we're working toward right now. We're getting down to 2 weeks before we've got to finalize a budget, and we've got to come up with something to fix our problem at the sheriff's office. So I've spoken up. I think the sheriff might have a few more comments, and we've got other things in our budget that we're glad to talk about, and we're prepared to discuss. And I know there's a lot of things in there, but there's no single thing in that budget that's more important to the future success of the sheriff's office and addressing our pay and getting our personnel up to where it needs to be in our staff. So
Well,
I appreciate you stepping in and explaining that.
One thing I would like to mention is that I look on these salaries, and the same way I look on supplement for our teachers, is that we're investing in our community. These are people that live here, that have homes, that have children, that purchase things in our local economy. And it's about investing in our community. It's investing in our citizens. And I feel like that's a very important use of our tax revenue.
I'd just like to say, like Chief said there, I do appreciate the support from each and every one of you. It's great that we live where we do. You know, if you watch the 6 o'clock news, kind of follow along with the media, it's a consistent attack on the law enforcement profession, and it's one thing we don't find here in Jackson County. We still got a lot of support. A lot of people appreciate the men and women that serve this community, and I'm very thankful for that. We're shown that every week. It's every week we're shown that, and we're thankful we live where we live. But the national trend has had its impact on people getting into the profession of law enforcement. Our community college at Southwestern, community college at Haywood, the enrollment numbers are down for our basic law enforcement programs. So if you can find it within the budget and to present this into the final budget and approve it, I think it'll show the men and women down there just, how much their community does support them. So, any more questions about the budget?
Any other questions from the board members?
No, can I make one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
I did want to say that I'm in support of the cameras and that whole idea of leasing those and that proposal. And Deputy, or I'm sorry, no, Mr. White, I want to call you the correct.
You can call me Matt.
No.
Chief, he's a chief deputy.
He's a chief deputy. White said something very, it was informative for me when he said at our meeting that those cameras have a dual purpose. They protect citizens, but they also protect the law enforcement. And I thought that was a very important aspect with all that's going on in the media right now. Chief Hall, this I think is an important step for us so that we can, we know that our officers work with integrity, and this will prove that.
I appreciate that. And I'm going to tell you, just on a side note, we're ahead of the curve by getting by preparing that and getting it out to you, because there's a lot of legislation that's under consideration at the state level that's going to force
I've heard that.
local law enforcement and state law enforcement to bring their video camera programs up to snuff. And so this program is in place, we're ready to pull the trigger on it. And when that legislation becomes law, which I feel like it's going to, then we're going to be ready to implement. And so we've done ourselves a service by preparing that and getting it in y'all's hands well before this legislation. We didn't visualize why it was going to come about, but we're glad that we were ahead of the curve on it because of what's coming.
And that Axon, did I say that right?
Axon.
Axon program, what impressed me about that was the technology side that's going to free up your detectives to do more, help the citizens of our county by when you gather those videos from a scene and you take the crossroads at 64 and 107, all the businesses that have their private cameras, just to acquire that information, bring it in, process it, I did not realize how time consuming, particularly when you get into a capital case and you have to even go across state lines and gathering information. It took 2-3 detectives a week to gather.
Weeks, plural, weeks, yeah.
With this Axon, the technology and an app that all goes with it, it'd probably take the detectives that took weeks on a crime, might just take them a few hours.
Something they can do right out of their car out here in the field, talking with business owners. And that's the big key to it. And like Miss Woody said, it's not something I took lightly, and I've done a lot of discussion with a lot of chief of police and a lot of sheriffs across the state, and got a lot of feedback before I even ever tasked the major with coming up with us a body camera presentation. So, and most of the sheriffs that I talked to across the state, a lot of them was reluctant at first to get in the body camera business, but what they all told me, none of them had any regrets, and all of them said that it would protect your good officers, and if you had a bad officer in there, it would weed them out. And it said their on staff assaults and their detention centers had really reduced. So it's a good program, and but the key to it is the evidence management. It can save so much time, and it's Major Queen, he's been working on that. If you got any questions for him, he'll be more than glad to step up here and answer them. Because I tasked him with finding us the best product out there that's going to be reliable and stand by and, stand up to the day in and use of law enforcement in the field. And this is what we come up with.
Is the press, are they knowledgeable about Axon program?
I'm sorry.
The press, the media, are they knowledgeable about the Axon program and what all it can entail?
Probably not. We've not given our budget out to the media. They might have picked it up through other sources, but we didn't have a press meeting with it or anything. Other agencies I know have had access to Axon for years, have been using it. Probably one of the closest agencies that uses it that everybody's familiar with is Asheville. And so the press in Asheville is very familiar with how it works there. And of course, the state law on reducing how video that's in the custody of law enforcement is disseminated has probably been one of the biggest things the media has kept up with, which really isn't the brand Axon, but it's really just how they deal with video on all their fronts. So I know that, but once it ever gets to that point, I don't know exactly how the press can get involved with it. But other than the fact that I'm sure that when you do have a critical incident like happens across our country, we're not going to be immune to that. We're not immune to that. When you do have those situations occur, it's nice for us to go back and be able to review those situations and just make sure that we know what happened, because we weren't there. And so if you track in the media what happened in the eastern part of the state, allowing the family to come in, that is one of the options that can come through the court system. We've been dealing with it from the body camera portion and asking for it a very short period of time. But in reality, as far as video is concerned, since we've got the jail videos where we started, and the Justice Center security video, we've been kind of dealing with that, with how the public wants access to that, and then also with how defendants want access to that as well in the court system. Ms. Baker and I have had several conversations with some people and attorneys and about how that's to be released. So it's a very interesting topic. We just don't have them as widespread in our cars as we want them, and none on our officers that we want. So
Beside the officers, the cars also have a video.
That's correct.
And they seem like they're linked together.
They're all linked together.
And what impressed me also is when you go to an intersection and they're having, somehow through technology, the video, the cameras can detect a possible stolen plate or a car or something on the list that the human brain might not catch, looking with everything else, other distractions that the officers might have. So it's, to me, it's kind of imperative to offer, to make sure you have those tools to work with.
Commissioner Jones, like I said earlier, I have spoken to a number of sheriffs and chiefs of police. It's just what something, you know, I put a lot of thought into it. Financially, it's a big number. And so, you know, I put a lot of work into it prior to approaching the major. And nobody that I've talked to, it's the law enforcement executive is regretting the move forward with it. And I do believe, I don't want to speak for Mr. Adams, but I do believe in my communication with Mr. Adams, I believe he's looking at some alternative funding sources that might provide some relief to our taxpayers. So that's a big plus.
Just my comment about the media was just, I was so impressed with the program that it'd be nice to communicate some of those the positives, and it's going to help our county.
Yeah, absolutely. If we get to the point we get to purchase them, I don't have any trouble having a meeting with the sheriff's approval and showing them what it's capable of.
That'd be great.
It'd be a unique thing. This county's not rolled out, you know, in the manner in which we want to do it. And I think it shows support for the community, back to what we're trying to do to show them. You know, you mentioned the word integrity.
Yes.
It's just, that's a word that you earn, not a word that you just throw out there. And so we know that our community is very supportive of our law enforcement. I think there's some that doesn't understand that they can support us. So I think stuff like this can help, you know, sway some of those people who don't trust us to come on board with us and trust us, because I know that we are a trusted law enforcement agency. So I think it has the ability to bring some of those people on, you know, to say, hey, they're trying to do all they can do to garner the support of their community for those that don't already support them. I do think that could be a positive as well.
So just bring us back full circle right quick. The major request from the sheriff's office, and the sheriff today is asking us to work towards trying to include in the budget, the final copy of the budget, a median salary.
I'm asking you, please.
Yeah, so, okay. The other things that we've discussed on the periphery here, we'll worry about trying to figure out how to deal with through other funding sources. Any other questions about the budget request?
We've all seen the presentation, and, you know, I don't want to take your time up. I know everybody's busy, so, you know, I'm going to just say in the past, have always been so very, very supportive, and I don't think we need to sit here and go over it page by page. Because,
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, we know from the past it's been very supportive to your law enforcement, but there's two big issues: our salaries and our Axon project. So we do want to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
Sir. You need to take a break from that now.
He has.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, no, Don's gonna walk us through some final things here, but that's why I wanted to see if you need to run down. You need to run down, meet your granddaughter. But she's not here yet. Okay, that brings us down to the last presentation from our county manager. Mr. Adams, would you like to sort of walk through what we've heard this morning and sort of update the board on? I know there's some questions I think the school system as well as SCC and others have presented as to what kind of requests that came before us this morning. Are they included in the budget, and what some of our options are? I know especially with the sheriff's office, and just sort of frame the debate for today.
So, yes, sir. And then I had no formal presentation today. It really was me just talking about the next meetings, and this is your budget, so we're here to provide information to you. And so having said that, if we could, Darlene, will you tell us what page number the SEC budget is back on the detailed line item? And then can we get back?
Well, I'll take that.
115.
So Tom, we're gonna be looking in our budget book, if you've got it with you. It's the page 115.
Then turn it upside down, read it back.
Your eyes are better than mine. You can read it backward.
Okay. So I just wanted to point out under the current year, if you're on page 115, it's a line item 115921. And can you see the second column that says current year budget, $2,092,010. And then you can see the request of $2,411,173. And then you see the recommendation of $2,401,296. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. What I wanted to do is she's pulling out some things that changed. I don't know if you saw Darlene and I talk a while, Dr. Thomas, William was presenting a couple of things. Actually, what has occurred is this really gets them right on their requested budget. Their requested budget technically is reduced by $13,000. So that $2,411,173, just so you know, was reduced by $13,000. Ultimately, that's because the capital was reduced by $13,000.
Right, the capital was under 5922.
Yeah, 5922, excuse me. And then that is actually reduced by 5922 is reduced by $13,000. But ultimately, you can see that the 2% across board gets them right where they're at. So the recommendation is 2% versus the 2.0 whatever percent. Ultimately, we've never gotten into to the final numbers like that. Very similar to, as you saw Tracy say, that her budget request was a little over 2%, but she was good with the 2% across the board. And normally, these operations they're big enough operations, they can absorb a few thousand here and there. And sometimes that actually 2% helps them. Sometimes they improve a little bit more. And so ultimately, I just wanted to show you that at the end of the day, the 2,411,000 versus the 2,401, there's just a slight difference between the request and the recommendation. Is that what you want?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then again, what Darlene and I was looking at was when you saw the.
So basically, to summarize, what was requested from the community college, what we heard today is they are satisfied with what's been put in the version of the manager's budget coming to us.
I mean, if you turn around and ask Dr. Thomas if he wants $9,000 more, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm telling you, generally speaking, I'm just telling you, annually speaking, when we look at these operations, I usually group, the community college, the Board of Education, and the library. These are outside operations that are large operations. When I say outside, they generally have their own governing bodies, their own payroll, things of that nature. And generally, we try to deal with them equally in regards to ongoing expenses and so forth. And so we gave SEC I'm recommending giving them the 2% plus the additional monies they need in order to operate the health sciences. Okay, so then the next item, as you can see, if you'll go back and it really wasn't here, I was wanting the presentation. Can you pull well, I guess we can stay here. The Board of Education is right there, and it's right above there, the public schools. Now, I can tell you that the $23,000 that was put into to Jake Buchanan's presentation to you regarding teacher supplement is in the recommended budget to this board.
All right.
So it is in there.
Okay.
Jake had talked to me, this is something that I talked to the school systems about, prior to making the recommendation. And we wanted to make sure, if you recall, this board put in, was it 359? Is it the 359 mid-year or 369? 359? This board put in $359,000 mid-year last year to help with teacher bonuses through COVID, with the idea that they would come back to you with a true teacher supplement plan. And so as I got to talking to staff, they told me that an additional $23,000 above the 359 you'd already allocated would help them get to that $1,700 number. And so we wanted that to make sure that number made sense. And so basically adding $23,000 is what allowed them to round it off to $1,700 per teacher. Past that, they were satisfied with 2% increase for their current expense. And then if you recall, on the capital side, I basically just recommended taking all the 2 half-cent sales tax and a 1/4-cent sales tax and being prepared to utilize those funds for basically the safety project that's fixing to be.
So likewise, as a recap, public schools, the request that they made before us today, everything that was in their slides has been fully funded.
Yes. And then, as you heard with the library, we do have monies in there that's not part of their request that's going to help with the HVAC system in regards to the main library. And obviously, you did hear Ms. Fitzmore say that her request was a little over 2%. She adjusted it down, but she was pleased with the 2% recommendation.
Then the final one would be the sheriff's request.
And the sheriff's request, again, without necessarily going through, ultimately from a personnel standpoint, what's in this budget. What's in the budget is that impacts the recommended budget is that impacts the sheriff is obviously the 1-step increase for all employees. There's obviously recommended that we set aside $1 million of personnel capacity, which we just had that conversation. Personnel requests, the sheriff did have several personnel requests. He was looking at other pay requests such as holiday pay, supplemental pay, all of that. None of that is in the recommended budget. The only other personnel recommendation for the sheriff that's in the budget that I presented to you is I did recommend adding an additional detective position. That is something that has been previously discussed about what's happening out at Colowee and the amount of apartment complexes and the need for the caseload they have for detective. And so ultimately, I do have that in there as far as their personnel requests. Capital-wise, what's not in the budget at this point is the Axon. But if you heard the sheriff say, what Darlene and I are trying to do, Ms. Fox, we're trying to figure out, can these cameras be purchased through some of these federal dollars that are coming to us?
Yeah.
Okay. And so now, having said that, I'm trying to figure out an alternative way to fund it. I believe many of you on this board, I'm impressed with that Axon system. I too have followed up with some city managers that have implemented this system. And I can basically repeat what the sheriff said. This is the system that most entities, law enforcement agencies, either wish they had or do not regret that they already have. Okay. And again, I sat through the same presentation as far as the quality and so forth. And if we were to move with cameras, I would recommend us obviously seriously taking a look at this. And we're trying to figure out a way to pay for it outside of general fund dollars at this point. And it would help us to understand, regardless whether or not we can figure out to pay for it with grant dollars or not. It sounds to me that there's several of you on this board that wish to see that move forward. Is that it? Yes, sir. And so the only other major thing as far as capital, Ultimately, I think he requested a replacement of 9 vehicles, and we came back with 8 vehicles. As far as turnover, we felt like that'll help him keep his vehicles being replaced. And we'll continue to deal with that year to year, but ultimately, we do feel like his replacement schedule's been 7 vehicles a year for multiple years now, and so we're going to just start incrementally increasing that. And we'll take a look at that in the next, not just this year, but next year, we'll keep evaluating that. Past that, I'm trying to think, without going through that book, is there anything else I'm missing major?
That's everything.
That's major, everything in there, as far as what's recommended and what's his request.
So I guess for staff's purposes, for the staff's sake, the sake of staff, as we go through this ongoing budget process of amending and changing budget to make sure that we come up with a final product to adopt, I think it's safe to say, but I just want to reconfirm before we leave here today that I'm hearing a consensus from the board that, one, we want to use the existing capacity to find a way to support the sheriff's salary increases as what was recommended from staff, the $344. And in addition to that, find other alternative means to potentially fund the Axon camera system. Is that a safe, am I gathering that correctly? Is any?
No, that's correct.
Okay.
But now this thing about solving the shortage of people.
Yeah.
I think it's we're kidding ourselves if we think this is going to just solve that. I mean, if you got these counties, Randy is doing a study. They're not foolish enough to do a study and then all of us realize that we're right where we need to be. Hell, the reason they're doing this is people's brought it to their attention that they're not where they need to be. So they're going to be getting raises also. I mean, if you're going to look at the tribe, they've got resources that none of us have.
Unlimited.
And those resources are not going to go away. And so at some point, we'll have to discuss this again, and it'll probably exactly this time next year.
I agree. I'm just, that's the point.
And it'll probably be again exactly 1 year after that again.
And that's the reason I'm trying to get at least $1 million. I don't know if that'll take care of it. We're putting aside some capacity because we know we're gonna have to deal with this to some extent.
Now, my impression, and I hope I got that right, was that the sheriff's department employees will now be under the same county step program.
Correct.
And that by making these recommended adjustments, it will hopefully start to address that problem. But like Commissioner Deeds said, it's going to be ongoing. Okay.
I mean, this is a problem in all aspects of employment right now.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, it don't matter if it's at McDonald's, they're having to give people more money to get to work.
Everybody's advertising help wanted, help needed, and here's what we're starting our people out of.
Now, is your business is the same way? Y'all are facing the same issues. Everyone is, I think.
We haven't increased our capacity at the restaurant. I haven't worked there in about 6 weeks or 5 weeks, but we haven't increased our capacity, occupancy capacity, because we don't have the staff at this time.
Oh.
So we're staying, and we're okay with that, but that's just the nature of the beast. There's a different subject. The Axon, there's a 3-year program and a 5-year program. On if I remember correctly,
It's 5 and 10.
oh, it's 5 and 10. Okay, but then
I would recommend, I'm looking for the 5. 10 years is just a long time.
Yeah.
And so I would recommend 5.
well, I was going.
Commissioner Striblin, any words of advice? Are you comfortable with everything we talked about?
No, I got everything. I agree with, I like what the sheriff said, how it weeds out the the bad Leos from the good ones, you know? It helps also recognize the ones that are doing a good job.
Does that help y'all to know what to start working to try to
Yes, sir.
build in? Do you want to, go ahead. Did you have something?
No, I'm cold.
Oh, I was going to say, do you want to highlight for tomorrow?
Yes, sir. So tomorrow, we have basically two nonprofits coming in. It's the two nonprofits that I've mentioned that are considered new nonprofits. Otherwise, we have no other scheduled presenters. The new two nonprofits are Teen Challenge of the Smokies and the Jackson County's Farmers Market. Before you leave, you gave a copy, okay. So Darlene gave you the Farmers Market's request. They're gonna come and present, but other than that, I would request that you guys come and prepare to discuss and give us any other direction from you in regards to the budget.
Okay. So just to recap, tomorrow morning, we'll start at 8:30. We'll have two presentations from the nonprofits. And then we'll be in a position to open it up for other additional requests. If any board member has looked through the budget and identified any other areas they'd like to bring to staff's attention to be working on, tomorrow morning will be a great opportunity for us to do that so that they'll have plenty of time.
And Tom, we're gonna email those to you, so you'll have it here in just a little while.
Okay, thank you, Heather.
It's a small thing, but in that farmer's market, when we took a break, I was looking through that request, and they needed some tables and chairs. I don't know if we have anything left over from the health department building or any equipment that we might be able to utilize, but it's just a little thing.
Well, hearing any other final comments, questions from anybody? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn this work session?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Y'all want to see a view of my room here before you go?
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, look at
I hope you put plenty of sunscreen on, Tom.
Oh, I got cooked yesterday. I got cooked like a little chicken, I swear.
Well, don't get cooked today.
No, I won't. But we are going fishing right now.
All right. Well, good luck to you. We'll see you in the morning.
Thanks. I'll see y'all in the morning. Everybody have a good day.